You're listening to the Level 5 podcast, featuring wide-ranging conversations on the subjects that matter in business and management.
On May 21st, Level 5 Strategy introduces Business Women of Influence first speaker session featuring Linda Hasenfratz. We've divided up the top highlights from the event into two parts. You're now listening to part one, highlighting specific learnings from adapting during COVID.
We took this idea of balancing customer, employee, financial, and we symbolized it with a three-legged stool. We call it the stepping stool of success. And the idea is if you forget about one leg of your stool, then your business, is going to collapse. And more than just a symbol, we also created a whole sort of measurement system around that concept where we're measuring what we think are good indicators of satisfaction or measures of satisfaction for each of customer, employee, and shareholder. And we measure every plant, group, and the overall corporation on that every month. And there's a bonus associated with it and a kind of a competition between plants as to who's the best performer, by leg and overall. And it's a way to kind of, again, weave that concept into the reality of how you do things every day. So you can't just say, here's my values, here's my philosophy, and put it on a poster on the wall. You need to find a way to weave it into the day-to-day of how you work. Another example is we did articulate what we saw as the core values that we have as a company and the leadership behaviors that we're looking for. And we wove that into our annual performance review process, whereby performance was equally weighted to behavior as defined by how well you reflect our core values and our leadership behaviors, as well as sort of more traditional indicators of performance, like whether like top level company goals or maybe specific objectives that had been laid out for you for the year. So, and there's other ways that we've woven those values, core values, and leadership behaviors into how we run and how we develop leaders. So I think that's really the key. It has to go from informal to formal, but not just formal on a wall, formal in a way that affects how you do business day to day.
Yeah, it seems like culture is like ingrained everywhere in your business.
I think it's really important. Like, I think that you can't underestimate the value that your culture has in your business that to drive your success. Certainly, I think our culture is a huge driver of our success at Linamar.
So switching gears a little bit, on our previous interview, you had mentioned that Linamar seems to thrive in a time of crisis. So I was just wondering, what would you say has been like your greatest learning so far throughout COVID?
Well, I would start out actually exactly where we left off and talking about how important our culture has been to our success, managing through COVID. I think that Linamar's culture actually really is perfectly suited to handle a crisis because we are naturally a very fast-moving company. We're naturally very responsive. We see something, we act. We don't, have a lot of bureaucracy and spend a lot of time, with asking a whole bunch of different people questions before we make a decision. We're decisive. We move quickly. We get the facts and make sure we're making the right choices, but we move fast. We're responsive. We're also very adaptive and accustomed to change, probably because continuous improvement and which is a big part of lean thinking, as I was just talking about, is so ingrained in our company to change and improve every single day. And we're also very top and bottom line focused. So that kind of culture really suits you well to managing a crisis. Make sure you've got a team with the right skill set and resources to be able to handle the situation and make the decisions and the right capabilities. And then you gather facts, you gather data, you get all the information you can in order to put a plan together. And then you follow up like rigorously on implementing and executing on that plan. And then you communicate like excessively, right, with everybody, your employees for sure, so they know what's going on, but also your customers and interacting with them and what's, what their needs are and what their plans are, and our suppliers, our shareholders. Everybody wants to know, especially in a crisis, what's happening because there's so much uncertainty. So the more you can do to try to relieve that anxiety by providing information, the better. So, I think for sure that was a great process that we kicked into action right away. The whole ventilator initiative has ended up to be pretty significant for us, and it's actually been an amazing experience from a lot of perspectives. So first of all, how it started out was actually my daughter, Katie, who was living in the UK and working there, had come back to Canada when things were shutting down in England because she didn't want to be sort of stranded over there and on her own. So she came back here and, continued to work here for the company in the UK. And when she came back, she was talking about ventilators and how this was a big issue in Europe. And remember, Europe was a couple of weeks ahead of us on the pandemic. So they were experiencing challenges already that we didn't see for some time in North America. So she came back talking about how, the shortage of ventilators was a big issue. And, had we thought about doing something about that? And we thought, that's a really good idea. We should look into that. So we started investigating, different companies who were making, who made ventilators, who made them here in Canada. What were some good designs? Like, what were some ideas of how we could help out and get into production? So as a result, we had already done all that legwork and research well before the Canadian or Ontario government sort of started making phone calls around who can help us make ventilators. So when they did, we were actually ready to roll because we had, we already had this plan underway. So we had an advantage because we had already started doing some of that work to try to help get into production quicker. So fast forward to, today we are involved in 4 different ventilator programs. One of them, we are doing the full assembly, and it's actually, the product is much more than just a ventilator. It's actually like an ICU in a box. It's like basically if somebody's really ill, like you could put this with them and they could be like in a separate room, a hallway. It doesn't have to be the ICU and be completely controlled. So like as an indicator of that, there's 1,700 different parts in this assembly, whereas a typical ventilator might only have 100 or 150 parts. So it's 10 times, more than 10 times as complex. So we're doing full assembly for that. That's for a company out of Toronto called Thornhill Medical. Great, innovative company. Like, we've really enjoyed working with them and tooling this job up. So we are pretty much ready to roll in production. From when the whole thing started until production ready was about 6 weeks. And until actual production, I'm going to say 8 weeks to actual production of those units. So that's something we're very proud of and excited to get into production on in the next sort of week to 10 days. And then the other 3 projects that we're involved in, we're making components for 3 different ventilator manufacturers. One, we're making 43 different parts for one ventilator. We're making 16 for another and just 1 for the third. And those programs, we've been in production since the beginning of April on the first of those programs, which was about 2 weeks after we got a phone call from that manufacturer to ask us if we could tool up. So that took us 2 weeks to get into production. The one that's 43 probably took us about 4 weeks to get into some regular production, and the same, the third project was also 2 to 3 weeks. So yeah, I mean, we moved really quickly. And it's been really good from a couple of perspectives. One, it gave our team something to do when all of the rest of our customers were shut down. So that felt good. And B, something really positive to focus on, because, they're making ventilators that are going to save lives, and making parts for ventilators that are going to save lives. And that gave a great sort of positive feeling to the team and a boost to morale when morale was pretty low. You had a lot of people off, and so that was a great side benefit of the whole thing, that it gave our team a really great morale boost. And then secondly, it actually taught us a lot about the medical device industry, which is a market that we're interested in expanding into. Not necessarily ventilators. I mean, that wasn't actually on our list of things that we're trying to pursue. But regardless, it has taught us a lot about the industry and how it works. We've met lots of new players through the whole supply-based management side that I think has been really valuable. So, as we look to develop our medical device expansion strategy, I feel like we're much more informed about being able to do that today than we would have been 2 or 3 months ago.
Thank you for listening in on top highlights from the Business Women of Influence event. Please listen to part 2 to hear more insightful advice from Linda on entrepreneurship and challenges that she's overcame.
Thanks to you, our listeners, for tuning in to Strategy Lounge, the Level 5 podcast. To learn more about our work, please visit level5strategy.com.